Well, again, if you guys do have any questions, remember, better sooner than later, especially because today is the last day of the session. So if you have been taking a look at the reports that we've been covering in production, maybe reading some of the job aids, some things are not clear, or you have discovered some things that you would like to share with us, please do so before the end of the WebEx session. Do it through the using the raising of a hand, and we can unmute you so you can speak up, or write it in the chat simply. Remember, to all panelists, so we can all take a look, and when I mean all is SMEs in New York, the RDM team, and Daniel and I here presenting the WebEx. It's much easier for all of us to receive your questions than for just one of us and then share it with the rest. So please remember, anytime you have a question or you would like something to be clarified, just share that with us in the chat or speak up. All right, so we're going to continue today where we left off. So the first screen again, we're taking a look at the mind map, and just as a quick reminder, we sort of started with the kind of like the process we would normally use when receiving goods, all the way till these goods are written off and disposed, and we added the reports into each one of these sections so you guys would easily visualize where each one of them falls in, or what type of data we're going to obtain from each one of them. The first one being the receiving goods. We've seen report 10, then we moved on to inventory management reports, warehouse stock records. We even yesterday we saw the 12 and 15 from my side, 13, 14, 16 from Daniel, and I believe we finished off with report accident incident, and 6 and 8 for write-off and disposal. So that brings us to this last section. So today we're going to see, at least with me, report 22, 23, 27, and the analysis workspace for write-off and disposal, and then Daniel will jump in to go over report 18 and 25, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so let's get started with report 22. So not found yet, location, write-off, lost, timeline. Okay, so let's take a look at what that means in terms of the name of this report and what it measures and what's the business need behind this one. So first thing, the business need for this report is to monitor the timeliness of the location of items marked with discrepancy type not found. And that's really the key aspect of this report, is that even though we have taken a look at reports 6 and 8, where we were also monitoring in a way items with write-off, let's say, or undergoing write-off, whether being approved or not being approved yet, and measuring the timeline between them being approved and not approved, or how long have they been in write-off, and so on. The key part of this report is the actual discrepancy type not found yet. Okay, so remember, after doing a physical verification, we can change the status of the equipment to not found yet. So this is what this report is mainly focusing on, okay? And let's see what it measures. So basically, the average time between detection of not found yet discrepancy. Okay, so here we go. First, the detection of the not found yet discrepancy by PMU, and location of the item by Asset Commodity Manager. Also, it applies to all items within the physical verification scope, and it's measured in days. Okay, the intention of this report to provide the KPIs for location timeline, which means average time between the detection of discrepancy not found yet, and location of serialized equipment. And also provide the KPIs for write-off timeline, average time between detection of discrepancy not found yet and initiation of write-off serialized equipment as lost. All right, so we're going to have two measures in this report, report 22/23, and we're going to take a look at how that looks. Okay, the KPIs for this are set at 30 days and tolerance rate at 10 days. All right, so let's move on to take a look again, as we've been doing so far these days, and since we may have more time today, we'll dig into some of these reports and see what they look like in the system. All right, so one of the first things we see here is the prompt with the KPI selection, which is the only required field. As we see, it's the one in red, and our two options, write-off timeline and location timeline. Of course, you can always select both, just like what we do with assets and equipment, that we can select one or the other or both. In this case, we have both options. And now let's see what each one of them means. Even though we saw it in the screen before, I added this section here to make it easier for you guys. So location timeline, if we're selecting location timeline, besides adding all the other information by business area, period, to, and reporting entity, what we're going to get is the average time detection of the discrepancy by PCIU and location of the serialized equipment item by the technical sections, while the write-off timeline is the average time of detection of discrepancy by PCIU and initiation of the write-off of the serialized equipment item as lost by the technical sections. Okay, so again, remember, write-off will be mainly data dedicated to write-off, and location timeline is data dedicated to viewing the average time between the detection of the not found yet of all the serialized equipment. So basically, you can work with one or both, and the report will look like this one. So it will have two initial tabs. With one, the first one we're looking at is the summary, and basically what we get is quite simple, just a one very easy to understand location timeline box where we have the average timeline between detection and location, and also the standard located. So let's take a look at that and see what scope determination we have. I believe it's always important to understand what's being left out of this report and what's being added to it. So there are no specific restrictions applied to this report, only the ones defined by the input parameters and the logic of the report. The scope of equipment not found is limited to results from physical verification, which means that only equipment records with that status, EQ and F, based on transaction code, okay, are in the scope. All right, so again, only the ones that are in the scope are the ones with the status equipment not found. All right, so we can move on to our next tab, and as the tab clearly expresses, we have the same information, but now in detail. All right, so not found yet timeline, and broken down by reporting entity, business area, whether it's one or different ones. In this case, we have two of them, also depending on the reporting entity we're looking at. The equipment, business area description, equipment number, type, and then the timeline and days for each of these pieces of equipment. So we have the equipment type, audiovisual equipment, 19 days, lights, trucks, and utility, 41 days. So based on the KPI we were looking at before, if I'm not mistaken, we had a total of, I believe, 30 days for the KPI. So of course, right away, should be calling our attention anything beyond that. And if we don't have enough information with this web intelligence report, which actually does break down into quite some detail, remember this would be a good report to use the filter with, just in case you have several pages of information there. Or if not, you could always just go down to the analysis workspace report. I don't know if there's a question already. Daniel, probably not. So we'll move on to what the analysis workspace report looks like. Okay, so let's say once I execute my report without really tampering much with or at all with the what the report looks like, we have the following, okay, and that's why I'm putting the square right on top of rows. By default, this is what you're going to have in the rows, and this is what it's going to look like in terms of data in your report. So the equipment reporting entity, date of detection, date of write-off, and equipment material type description are defaulted. So you'll have them here to the left in the report, which will allow you to understand when the date of detection was, let's say, submitted, and also the date of the write-off, and the type of material we're talking about, and the equipment reporting entity it's related to. And to our right, what's measuring here the KPIs is the write-off timeline that we have with the type of equipment, the equipment acquisition value, and timeline in days. Okay, we also have our total results, but mainly the information we have is... I broke off too much, the audio was breaking. Now it's better, okay. So basically, as you guys can appreciate, what is under the rows here by default in the square box is what we're going to be seeing to the left of our data, and then to the right we'll have our basic KPIs limited to write-off timeline. So in this case, for this specific screenshot, I'm sure that in the prompt, I only selected the write-off timeline option instead of both of them. to only have this type of information. All right, so basically that would cover both of our reports for 22 and 23, Web Intelligence and Analysis Workspace. Now we could probably take a look at it live, maybe. If maybe I would go to the one, the Web Intelligence report would probably be a good option, just to take a good look at it. So while I log in to the system, if anyone has a question or would like any clarification on that report, maybe this is worth a stab just to have the report open. All right, so I'm logging into Umoja now, and I believe I could go into production. This report, if I'm not mistaken, it's not in production yet, so I may be safer just by going into pre-production instead and taking a look at this report.
If I may, Brian, while this report is being loaded, in terms of roles, please bear in mind that if you do want to have a full perspective and accessibility to all this property management folder in BI, you do have to ask for BI 55 as an analytical user. So you will have access to the Web Intelligence as well to the AWS. What happens if you do not have the role or still it's pending? Because we do have received a lot of requests on this regard, and honestly, we cannot do anything from our trainer perspective. We cannot act as a functional approver at any point. So please liaise. Our suggestion is liaise with your SLO in the mission service desk. And first grab or take a look at the request form, and from there you have to have it signed by your supervisor and eventually functional approver if it is needed, and then it will be submitted to Umoja service desk in tier 2, and then they will approve and you will be granted with the role. But from our end, we cannot do anything besides informing you about the process and the roles involved. Okay, over to you, Brian.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Perfect timing. So now I have the page loading here, and we can take a look at this report in pre-production again, just to keep it safe. So what we're looking at, just to basically go over quickly what it is that I want to show, we're looking at report 22/23, the Web Intelligence report, just to take a look at how much it breaks down our items here with the discrepancy type not found yet in detail, and see if we meet our KPI, see if we're able to answer at least the basic questions that we can find on our first slide that I'm sharing here again, just by looking at this report. Let me just go all the way back to the KPI page. So yeah, it was set at 30 days and the tolerance rate at 10 days. So let's go back to Umoja and see what this report looks like. And we have it here. The one on the top is the one I'm interested in. Okay, so basically what we have here, we already see what are the required fields, our business area and our KPI selection, and then our optional fields here. So let's begin with, let's say 2018, and this time we'll go with July to June instead. Okay, and we'll select our business area. Now this is also a good reminder for those of you who are not already very familiar with how to populate and let's select another mission. This time I was going to write UNISFA there, but we sort of put them on the spot yesterday, so I might as well use another one. MONUSCA, no, not MONUSCA, MONUSCO, okay. And let's work with that one instead. And our KPI selection. So this is where it's key here. We have the location timeline and write-off timeline. Okay, so in this case, I'll select the write-off timeline.
Yes, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind some of you, the ones probably who do not know, that you can always save this prompt as a variant, right? For doing that, let's say that, as Brian just pointed out, you want to identify which is the report that found yet business area P18, and this is the type of report that you will be retrieving every week or every 2 weeks, for example. If you want to save this prompt, this variant, it's just a matter of clicking on the floppy disk on your right, exactly over there. You click there. You put a name to that variant. You put a name that will remind you that it's MONUSCO, for example. You can put MONUSCO right off, and then timeline, and you click in OK. And you see in the drop down now it's already there. So next time you double click on this report and the pop-up window with the prompt appears all blank, it will be just a matter of clicking on the drop down and you'll see MONUSCO right off timeline. You select that and it will be automatically populated. So we're trying to chip in with all these small tricks in case that you don't know them, but please bear in mind that you obviously can do this for any prompt, regardless whether it's an analysis workspace or a web intelligence report. Over to you, Ryan.
All right, just quickly, just in case someone is asking themselves this question too, since I created the variant with the floppy disk with the plus sign, now that I've created it, should I click on the save floppy disk now just to make sure that this variant is saved? Okay, because if I don't and probably just execute the report, it won't be saved, correct? All right, so just to make sure, okay, you create one with the floppy disk with a plus and then you save it once you have already added your data to it. So we click on OK, and basically what we're looking at is the business area MONUSCO and the write-off timeline. You'll see on our first screen we have a brief summary of that data, and then we'll go on to the next tab and see it in detail. Okay, from this report we'll jump into the next one, which is 27, but since we're good on time, we may want to dig into some of this data and see what it looks like live. Okay, so what we're measuring here, what we're at least want to look at, is we want to see if we meet these KPIs set at 30 days, or in at least a tolerance rate of 10 days. And we're doing this for, of course, those items marked with discrepancy type and not found yet. We're looking at in this case, the intention is to provide KPIs for not the location timeline, but in this case, I'm only looking at write-off timeline, okay, which is the average time between detection of discrepancy and initiation of write-off of the serialized equipment as lost. Okay, let's go back. Okay, then the report is still loading. So if it takes a little longer, I can probably move on and then head back to this one later. If I'll just take a quick screenshot of okay, just 1 second. I want to take a screenshot of those KPIs and then I can go back to it without having to change the presentation. Okay, so in this case I have no data to retrieve. That's quite strange. All right, so let's go back to our prompt here and see what other things I can change. Maybe expand the timeline. So, oh, I see why. I forget that I'm in pre-production. So what I had to do here, let's do 01 here. I thought it was in production. I'm adding dates that are way beyond the data. Okay, so here we go. January, February, let's say. That should be enough, or maybe I should go even further. Okay, and do 17. 01 instead. All right, and now I'll be safer. All right, well, it's a good thing. Since I was working on production this morning, I forgot that the dates just go up to February 2018 in pre-production. So that's why we had no data to show. But in the meantime, and to not waste more time on this one, since I already took the screenshot of what the KPIs are, I'm going to move on fast through these slides that we've seen before, and then once the report loads, we'll go back to it. And let's start looking at the next report, which is the report 27, called Write-Off and Disposal. Okay, and don't worry, I have the other one loading in the back, and as soon as that one's ready, we'll go back to it. Okay, so report 27, Write-Off and Disposal. We also have here our business needs, which are to define depreciated value for non-capitalized serial items for disposal process, estimated and operational depreciation, estimate depreciated value for write-off purposes. Okay, I thought somebody wanted to intervene. And cost-benefit analysis. And this report measures depreciated value of non-capitalized serialized items for the write-off and disposal process based on operational and IPSAS depreciation. How is this calculated or measured? It's calculated in dollars. And the intention is to produce reports on the write-off and disposal process for operational, statistical, and financial purposes. Okay, to also show the metrics on various moments in time for notification, whether when it was created and when it was approved. Okay, so in this particular case, we're not looking at any particular KPIs or any threshold for this report. Now, before I continue with this one, let's see, and still I'm getting no data on this write-off report. So that just confirms what I thought at the beginning of my day today. It's just not my day with technology. I'm just not being lucky with the results on some of these reports. Yes? Yeah.
Yes, our colleagues in RDM were telling through the chat that, yeah, here we go. Now, it's okay? Okay. Our colleagues in RDM were telling me that there are a few cases in regression of this particular report. So yeah, because now we are using this, we are using the production environment, and sometimes when we're jumping from one environment to another, we forget about the limitations of regression. So I think we can just move on and you know, follow the screenshots of that. Thank you. Thank you, Pablo.
Okay, thanks Daniel, and thanks guys in RDM for also being there quick on the draw for the response. Okay, so we're taking a look at report 27. Again, we're back here, and we just covered the business needs, what this report measures, and also to understand the intention and that the fact that we have no specific KPIs for this report. Now, this one will allow us to extract quite a lot of information, especially that is very interesting to a lot of you, and it's to link the notification number to write-off or disposal of items, right? That is something I know that is very interesting, and you can do that in other reports as well. We were discussing this yesterday, right, that some reports have a lot of objects and others may not have as many, but of course you can do the same thing in several reports, right? You can start dragging and dropping objects that will give you information that is probably found in another report as well. What the key thing here after a week of testing and playing around with these reports is to get the information you need from one, and if something calls your attention, like maybe a user status or the amount of time something has been on write-off, maybe you want to cross-reference that with physical verification, right, and items that haven't been inspected yet, or if they have been, what is their status? And that's basically what will be very useful for you guys using these reports. So again, in this case, what we have is, again, are required in optional fields if you do know the notification number, and this is one of those good ones where you could have obtained your notification number probably from another report. Let's say you were looking at report 1/3 analysis workspace, right, and you found a large number of assets or even equipment that hasn't been inspected in more than a year, or maybe ever since it was acquired. And you do have a notification number or a status for write-off, or maybe the status is not the one for write-off. You just want to cross-reference that notification number that report may give you with this report, the write-off and disposal one, and add a notification number here and view what's going on with this report. Basically, just so you know, this report will display only write-off notifications type. So if we do have a notification number in one of the reports for physical verification, and we add that notification number here and it doesn't return anything back to us, that's clearly telling us that the notification type is probably wrong. Also, maybe the status of the notification is probably wrong. So that should raise alarms and help you at least to square where the issue is, right? Let's say the granularity, that's the word that Daniel was using yesterday when you're trying to investigate some of the things that may call your attention and report. So this is one of those good ways of working with them, right? In parallel, have one report on one side doing one thing and the other to check on something else, and you'll see how they're all linked to each other. Okay, then we have the notification creation date, and then the background filters that in this case, there are no background filters previously applied. Okay, so let's check what this report looks like. I started with this screenshot because this is one of those very large web intelligence reports that you probably need to break down. So let's say you don't know the notification status or the notification number, and you just go with the full blast. I just want everything on this report for business area MONUSCO, let's say. You're going to have quite a number of data and pages that you're going to have to surf through. And it's not easy to do so in a web intelligence report. But if you do filter using some of the options that I'm showing here, like notification status and selecting one option or another, or even just squaring down to notification approved, we will get less details. As you can see here, we have quite a large number of columns with information regarding a business area, reporting entity, the equipment number, its description, the material group. I mean, anything you really may need, the age in years, the acquisition date, even its value. Okay, and it goes on. This is another page on that report that will also display a large number of details, like the usage in years that we have, and equipment material planned useful life in years is also there. It goes on even further with some more details, even some that could be very interesting to you, as could be the derecognition date, if applied, the notification number next to it, the status, okay, also to the right of that column that we can see, and even the case type. Okay, so this report, as you guys can see here, is quite extensive, and it's only the Web Intelligence report, so it should provide you all the details you need to start understanding if you're on track and you're doing things correctly in terms of setting an equipment or an item up for write-off and disposal by linking it to the correct notification. Okay. One more page still. Okay, so so far we've seen at least 3 rows of pages of data, and in this case, now we have the disposal method here, the case description, the notification group category, as well as the request creation date, even the date that it was approved in. So you can cross-reference tons of data here, and this is probably just one of the pages of data. You can surf through a number of them, so it's a good thing to use the filters for this type of report. Okay, if you prefer to just use the analysis workspace, you can do that as well, where here's what the prompt looks like. Again, you have your required fields and some optional prompt field as well, with the date from, date to, and business area. I've added also the scope determination, which is exactly the same as the Web Intelligence report, and the fact that there are no previous filters applied. And if we take a look at what that report looks like, it will also remind us of what we were seeing in the Web Intelligence report, right? So we have a default of the equipment acquisition value, replacement cost, asset current APC, equipment residual value. So in this case, we have a lot of data in numbers. There's more to look at if we just double-click on measures and see what other KPIs we can take from this data, as well as information related to the specific reporting entity and business area. So far, that's what this report will give us in terms of information for write-off and disposal. Very important to this report would be the fact that it will link your notification number, and that will also, you can link that notification to its status to understand the amount of time it takes to approve it from creation date. And the best thing about this is to cross-reference this type of report with probably the 1/3 report, as I was doing yesterday and this morning. There's a lot of interesting things that will start popping up in terms of data when you look at what you have physically verified already, what the status is of that equipment, and then understand if any of it is in write-off status, supposedly, or at least that's what one of the reports shows, to make sure and cross-reference it with this one. Okay, so far for those two reports, yes, Daniel?
Yes, Casimiro is writing in the chat as well as Juan. Just to bear in mind that the last version of report 27 is not yet in production. We are talking about the last version because this report is going to be replaced, and the version that you find now in production is the former one, the last, the one that is going to be replaced. That's why you may find some difference between the job aids and then the report itself.
Okay, thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Cas and Juan. I don't think that I mute myself. No, I'm fine. All right, so definitely, and I guess we can probably, they'll be available next week. I really don't like to give a date exactly, but guys, since you guys are checking these reports in production constantly, just bear that in mind, okay, what was just said by Daniel. All right, so eventually from here, I was going to move on to the write-off and disposal AWS. Not sure if, Daniel, you want to cover another one first, or I just move on, okay? So what we're looking at here is the write-off and disposal, let's say, analysis workspace for write-off and disposal report, where we can definitely work around with some data very similar to the report we just saw before, report 27. Again, the prompt looks almost identical, except for maybe the optional areas here. And let's see, we don't have a job aid for this one out yet, but there was some key information that I found from those job aids that are not yet published that I think is important to share for this report to understand what we're getting here. First thing, of course, the scope determination is that this report only displays the write-off notifications type PW, okay? It excludes equipment that has completed write-off before the period we selected in date 2. Notification creation date is within date from and date 2 as well. And the write-off and disposal statuses are displayed only if they are within date from and date 2. Okay, so basically that's the information we're going to be getting. So a lot of the data that this report will return will depend on what we're adding to the date range and also the type of notification, PW. Then also the connection between the equipment and notification is made by equipment inventory number. Okay, and this is a critical concept, something we have to keep in mind, especially because you have to really keep this concept in your mind when you're also pulling other types of reports. Like, for example, again, I'll make reference to that 1/3 because it's the one I've been playing around with a lot. And I saw that for some of these equipments or assets that haven't been inspected, let's say ever, if you pull the equipment inventory number object into the report, you'll see that there is an equipment inventory number. And what does that mean? That's the text field used to record the number of the write-off notification within the equipment. Okay, so it's to record the number of write-off notification within the equipment, which means that if I do have data in this equipment inventory number, that means that there is a write-off notification with this equipment. So if this equipment has never been inspected before, and on top of that there is an equipment inventory number, then that should be giving us something to think about.
Yes, and on this, we were discussing with our BI developers here in Messi as well. Please bear in mind that this equipment inventory number, this field in the equipment master record, it's a free text. So in case that you are wondering whether only numbers will be accepted, the answer is no. You can actually put more things than a number. So please bear in mind that if you are planning to fill in with information that field, please type only numbers, because those numbers will be the ones retrieved as a field in BI for the equipment inventory number. Okay, so it's free text. It's not only numbers themselves, but it accepts all kinds of characters, letters, and over to you.
Thanks, Daniel. So Okay, very interesting to make that remark because, of course, it's not just going to be the numbers, but at least if we have some data there, it should be ringing a bell, right, and making you think that probably if it hasn't, the equipment hasn't been inspected and does have an equipment inventory number, then there's something going on probably with the equipment status or system user status. Okay. So all write-off disposal status states are as the first occurrence of the respective status within the notification equipment object number. Okay, in JCDS table. So I think for that scope determination, we have enough information there. And again, a reminder, there is no job aid yet available for this one, but will be shortly. And what the report will look like and the type of data that we're going to be getting from this report. Okay, so again, there's really no specific KPI for this report. It's really intended just to provide an overview of the status of the write-off and disposal process, okay, by showing the number of equipment within one of these processes along with the average timelines. Okay, so we have here count of notifications. We can see here count of equipment. So 37 count of notifications versus only 188 count of equipment. And then we have the equipment with write-off complete, 188, equipment with write-off pending, the write-off timeline, disposal timeline. So again, exactly what it says here in terms of the report intention, right? To overview status of write-off disposal and shows the number of equipment within one of these, okay, along with the average timelines. And also important, the last point here, please note that this report summarizes equipment held by each business area reporting entity at the execution date. So maybe this is one of those interesting reports to pull data on when you're adding yourself as a reporting entity and all those business areas linked to your reporting entity. And basically whatever data is returned and the business areas that do show up there will be the business areas that belong to your reporting entity and also have equipment to show in this report. Okay, just to play around a little further with the report as we did earlier, we also have here another look at what you can do with this report. Again, I just stuck to the equipment reporting entity and the material group description to help us understand maybe the type of materials here undergoing write-off. We have the notification approved start write-off date and also the notification request approved date. So we can start comparing the dates between when it was created, when it was approved, when it was requested to be approved, and start cross-referencing that with the number of equipment and the average time, okay, to help us round up. One of the key aspects of these reports is to really start at large and then go smaller and smaller. I remember that was one of the first lessons I heard Daniel say in one of the workshops, and it's really useful with this report and others, okay, to start digging in and maybe just rounding up to what is the largest equipment average disposal timeline, and maybe I want to dig into that, because sometimes you'll see now here we only have maybe 1, 2, 3, 10 pieces of equipment, but other times you'll have 300, and really expanding that and viewing all the 300 equipments may be quite a headache and will take long to pull the report. But if you go from largest to smallest, like say you only want to look at the one with the 10, I would recommend doing that first. So basically that covers what I wanted to show in this report. Just go over the what this report measures. I believe there's a question. Okay. Well, all right.
Hello,
I think Wael, you already consumed all your questions. Sorry, you just can't intervene anymore.
I believe so, yes. Actually, no, I'm clear with the notification type. I have one quick question about the measuring of the equipment, the disposal timeline. Now we know whether there's no fields to fill for disposal in Emoja. So now is it from the start of time of the notification to the end time when you close the notification? This is the time we measure the disposal. Just maybe I missed the instruction, or I missed the teaching.
Okay, well, that's a good question, Wael. So can you just repeat it? So we'll have, since we also have the RDM team listening in, you're asking more about how something is calculated. Can you repeat that question? Sorry, because there was some background noise there.
Yes, the disposal timeline.
Disposal timeline, okay. Okay, so we're requesting an answer on that one, and we'll be right back with you, okay?
Thank you.
So how's the disposal timeline calculated with this report specifically, right? All right, so we'll keep that one there. And I also heard another beep. I think there's someone else with a question. Okay, so let's see who else we have here. So Marie, see if we can probably just take 2 or 3 questions and provide the answers. Hi Marie, can you hear us? I think you're unmuted.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, Brian, I'm putting the same line with YL. Actually, the timeline that this report calculating, is it data coming from the history transaction, or is the data referring to the template, the tax template, the time that we set in the tax template?
Okay, well, that's another good addition to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a way, you're adding that information to the question from Well on how is disposal timeline calculated, right? Historical transaction or the tax line that you add?
Yes.
Okay, because that's something I'm unfamiliar with, that tax line. Okay, so Daniel?
Yes. Hear me? Yes. Okay.
Sorry, Anne, that was the last thing, right? I know your hand was raised twice, but I think that was the last question, first and last.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Our colleagues in RDM are telling us that the disposal timeline is calculated as the days between the notification is set to review approved until it is set to disposal completed status. So difference between the days when the notification is set to review approved until the disposal is in completed status. You can find the description of these days, let's say, of the calculation in the job aid that I posted in the chat, as the RDM is saying.
And that job aid is already available? It's public? I didn't think it was. That's why I hadn't shared it before, just in case. So, okay, I think that may cover the, it was just interesting what Anne-Marie was adding to the history transaction and the tax line, and if that had any influence in how the disposal timeline is calculated. But according to the developers, no. Days between review approved, right, and disposal completion status. Okay.
The job aid will be modified accordingly. So that's why you didn't find it, right? Yes. So once it's published, then that data, that piece of information will be included.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, guys in RDM, and thank you, Marie, and also Wael for the question. If there's any other question, now would be a good time to raise your hand or just write it in the chat. So Daniel will be keeping an eye on the chat, and when you raise your hand, we hear quite a loud beep, and we'll know that you want to intervene. Okay, so besides that, I think that we're done with this report as well. We're almost 10 minutes, 15 minutes away from a break, so maybe we can take the break now instead and then jump in and go all the way through. Okay. Yes, perfect. So let me just show you guys again so far what we've seen and where we're going, since today is the last day of our session here. And again, we just covered report 22, report 23, we saw also report 27, write-off and disposal, and the analysis workspace for write-off and disposal. Okay, remember, if you have any other questions, let us know. And now I'm just going to share actually I'm going to make Daniel the presenter so he can count down for the break. So we're going to take 5 minutes. Yes, 5 minutes is good. All right, so guys, we just started our 6-minute break. Actually, Daniel just granted you an extra minute, and we'll be right back and continue with the other reports.
Hello, you hear me, Brian? Yes, okay. Hello, everyone. Daniel speaking. Here, this is your water over here. So we're getting back to the session. Finally, looks like we're getting there. You see all these black font boxes with black background. Those are the reports that we have been covering since last Monday. Looks like such a journey, right? Since Monday, and we do want to we want to appreciate your attendance throughout the sessions. Still two more reports are pending, but you can see in this screen, in the mind map, the number of reports, concepts, and KPIs that we have been covering in only 4 days and a half. So it's totally understandable. If you do not have the feeling that have grasped all single reports and casuistic within each of the KPIs, it's totally normal. That's why we have time to digest through the job aids and the sessions, record the sessions that we have posted in our playlist in YouTube, as well as these presentations that we do share with you every single day. And finally, as well as the support that either our colleagues in Valencia, New York, and ourselves from Valencia and the training team will be able to give to you down the road. So all those reports have been covered. Now we are missing only two, which are report number 18 and 25. Both of them related to the disposal method, to these KPIs related to disposal. The very last business process related to once you start the write-off process. Obviously, there is several ways to do the disposal. Basically, the red line between the two types, or the several types of disposals, will be whether it's a commercial sale or whether it's other type of disposal. So that's a bit of the boundaries between the process. So basically, report 18 and 25 are going to give you KPIs and information between for those two big processes, whether it's a commercial sale or the rest of these disposal methods. So we shall start with report number 18, which is the disposal, and I'm going to use the laser pointer here, I think, because I always forgot to put the laser here. So report number 18 conveys two types of reports, the web intelligence and analysis workspaces. The title of the report is disposal backlog greater than 180 days, let's say like half of the year, 6 months. The business need is to monitor the timeliness and backlog of all disposal activities, and the measurements involved are the outstanding written off serialized items that are pending disposal action for a period greater than 180 days, which is, let's say, half a year, over the total of serialized numbers awaiting finalization of disposal action. So over the total universe of items to be disposed or to be taking action in terms of disposal, the ones that have been in waiting for more than half a year. So that's the KPI. And the unit of measures is days, so we'll tell you the number of days. And the KPI 1, that's what we call the KPI 1 for disposal. It's the KPI related to all the items that are going to be disposed other than commercial sale. That's why you have a tab devoted only to that backlog. And the KPI number 2 embedded within this report is the disposal by commercial sale. So if we're going to dispose the serialized item by a sale, then, and there is a backlog in that regard, all the items will be placed in the second tab, disposal backlog by commercial sale. The target of this KPI is at a 0%, excuse me, I think it's percentage and not days, the unit of measure, we have to change that. It's 0% and the tolerance rate at 25%. So in terms of its scope determination, and we're going to insist on the concept of notification number and equipment on inventory number field. First bullet point here is that the equipment being written off are identified based on the notification number, and the notification should be a PW type of notification. So once you create the notification, you'll have a number for that, and that number has to be included in the equipment master record of that equipment within the inventory number field, and has to be manually updated. That's very important, because otherwise, if we do not intervene physically in that field, put in the number, the notification will not be tracked in the reports. So, and then we may have a picture in BI or in ECC that actually is not complying with reality. So that's quite important to know. That's why we put that, I insisted, a first bullet point. Then the identification of disposal method is done based on the user status in the equipment master, and the disposal methods that we are considering are the following. For KPI 1, which are all the disposal methods, but the disposal for sale will be the first one is E0048 cannibalization disposal method, E0049 destruction disposal method, E0050 donation disposal method, E0051 trading disposal method. So all the items which are going to be written off, and this disposal method, one of these disposal methods are going to be used, will be included in the KPI number 1 in the tab that you'll find in the report, whereas KPI 2, which is only for sale and commercial disposal method, will be the E0047. So that's as we said, the boundaries between the two KPIs is basically the method that we're going to dispose our serialized equipment. So only notifications of type PW. When we write off, we have to create these type of notifications. These are the ones considered in the report, excluding those completed, meaning that if they are completed, the disposal it's been completed, there is no backlog, so those notifications will not be included in the data of the report, obviously. So where the user status was set to disposal/impairment complete, which is E0030, then that piece of data or equipment will not be considered in the report. So once we have said about a bit of the template and what you can find in terms of the business need for this report, and then the scope determination, which are the boundaries in terms of data of the report, then this is the first report that the first prompt in the Web Intelligence report that we're going to consider, which is the prompt. It's the same regardless the type of disposal. What we will do is we have to insert a date to, where we want to refer our reports, a business area, that's compulsory, and then a reporting entity is optional as always, and the equipment type. Remember, the equipment type can be assets, can be equipment, but not assets, and then both of them. Okay, so please bear in mind that you can always select one of these three items for all the equipment that are pending disposal action. So this is how the report is going to look like, meaning that it's let's say a very straightforward table with several columns. First one's always identifying the business area and the reporting entity. The total approved items disposal by commercial sale, and this is the first tab. That's where you can find the type of disposal over here on the top header of the report. Whether the backlog or how many items are in backlog of less than 180 days, which is 57. the percentage, and the numbers of equipment in this business area with a backlog of more than 180 days. So that means that 8 out of 65 corresponds of a KPI of 12.31%. So are we meeting our KPI? Actually no, because it should be 0%, but we are within the tolerance, right? So I think the tolerance is 25%, so we are there. So next item, next action, if we want to have a full perspective of which these items are in terms of the equipment's pending disposal action. So probably going to our AWS for write-off and disposal, or write-off and disposal AWS for report number 18 that we'll see later. And from there, we can drag and drop equipment number, equipment type, the description, which is the fund center responsible, you name it. Plenty of different objects in order to really identify which those 8 equipments are, to where it belongs, where it's located, what is its function location, and so on and so forth. So as we always say, the Web Intelligence report is giving you a high-level picture of the reality. But if you want to give and drill down, dig in just a little bit more on what's the reality behind those numbers, then you go to the analysis workspace. Then, if you go to the second tab within the same report, you'll see the number of items that are going to be disposed other than commercial sale, right? So the same. We were talking about report number 18, the disposal backlog, if you do remember. The KPI involved was number 18, so we were trying to understand the percentages of items who are going to be who are in a backlog of more than 180 days, only by commercial sale. So that's the first KPI that we see in the report. Second KPI, it's the same layout in terms of table, but the items pending to be taking action in terms of disposal are a bit different because the disposal method is other than a commercial sale. Okay, so please bear in mind that you have 2 KPIs involved in report number 18, depending on the tab and depending on the disposal method. But the KPI, it will be at the very end of the column. So that's on report number 18. Trust us, besides this, there is no like real other items or actions that you have to take in for this report. Basically, it's giving you a whole perspective of the percentage of the items that are going to be in backlog of more than 6 months, let's say. And if you do have to go to report number 18, the AWS, and from there take a look at which is the equipment number and the specifics of those items. Okay, in terms of reporting on disposal, we do have another report. This is the last one, report number 25, which is only the ones devoted only disposal by commercial sale. Timeline completed. So it's basically the same thing in terms of it's going to monitor the timeliness of the disposal by commercial sale process, and the measurement will be the average time required for completion of the disposal by commercial sale. Because sometimes it's in the mission, and you can verify this. Basically, in reality, commercial sale may take more time, so that's why there is only this report only devoted for those particular items, right? So the target of this KPI is set at 180 days, and the tolerance date is 30 days, meaning that all the items that are going to be disposed by commercial sale over, and it takes more than 180 days, will be in this backlog. So in terms of prompt, it's basically the same prompt that we saw in the report number 18. You put the set date from and to the business area, equipment type, whether it's an asset or non-asset or both of them. And there, instead of 2, what you're going to have is 3 tabs. First one will show you details by summary on business area. So very high level information, which is business area, KPI duration shall completed, will be 27 days, and the purchase cost and the depreciated value of the items. That will be for the first tab on report number 25. Then second tab will identify the details on each of the commercial disposals. So here would have a business area PA in with the indication approval date as our RDM were out in the chat. Starting date of the notification approval is the date, and the fourth column will be the by commercials. Time limited will be 54 days. Total of equipment one KPI duration to complete 50. Breaking up a little bit. Not now, Brian? Is better? Okay. So I was saying that the second tab will identify the KPI duration cell, complete just a little bit of details. So detail on the approval date of the notifications, right? And the timeline duration for the sale to be completed with the purchase cost and the depreciation value as well. Third tab will give us a little bit more details on the transactions and displays the product category description of the equipment. So besides the other two tabs where we're telling us high-level picture of the number of equipment to be disposed by commercial sale, the notification date, the third tab will tell us the product category description of the item. So in this case, the KPI duration sale, it took 54 days, and the product category will be GPS and utility vehicles with the same depreciation value and the purchase costs. Okay, that's as per the Web Intelligence report. Basically, very high-level information in three tabs. If we do want to have specifics on each of the items, then our ally here is the AWS. This analysis workspace will give us the same information. You see that we have the KPI duration sale 54 days. It's actually, I think I took the same prompt in both reports with the same equipment acquisition value, but there you have the equipment type description. What I did is I drag and dropped in the report this object, equipment type description, and from there I see the breakdown of the different items by days and the purchase cost as well. I even think that this comes by default. So by default, it comes with equipment type description, and that you have a set of other columns here on the bottom. More information on the disposal timeline, depending summary by equipment type description, and then a total for KPIs. And in the yellow, you see these are the totals only by each of the rows. Okay, so let me go back to the mind map first, so we have a better picture of what been seen these 5 days. Okay. First of all, we started on Monday with the virtual goods receipt with report number 10. Then we went to the inventory management reports, 19.9, report number 8. It goes, what happened here? I don't know what happened. Let me see. Here we go. Is it okay? I don't know. Today definitely is not the best day. Right. So, and the report number 10 in receiving goods, then we were in inventory management, then we went to warehouse stock records, and then incident, accident, small report, write-off and disposal. Obviously, you have more information on the write-off reports rather than in disposal. For disposal, we have these two reports that I went through real fast on the last 10 minutes. But then if you want to do a bit of research on what's in write-off and disposal, connecting both processes, then you have to launch the report, the analysis workspace for write-off and disposal that was explained by Brian before. So I had the feeling that this interruption kind of like ruined the whole week. So with this, we want to finish let's say, the explanation of the reports. As you can see in the mind map, there are plenty of them. These reports are basically linked to KPIs in property management. All these KPIs have one or at least one or two type of reports, one AWS, one Web Intelligence report. We know which are the difference between the two. We know that some reports are close and very similar to others, and you can select and track the information from different ways. There is no only one report that will give you information right off. We have plenty of them. At least you have 6 for what we can see here in the mind map. In terms of warehouse and property management, we have 7 reports to give you a perspective of what's being physically verified and the status of all the equipment. If you want to analyze our stock in terms of what's operational and in good condition, what it's been utilized over 6 months, and what is our stock ratio and by category of stock or stock type, we have plenty of other reports from 12 to 16. And then if we want to report based on our inventory, we have 19 for P&E, 9 if we want to reconciliate our discrepancies in the physical verification, and then plenty of reports in number 20, at least 4, 1 Webby and 3 analysis workspaces that will give us information on the operational inventory for UN, IPSAS, the UN reserve, static deployment of stocks, and rations and bottled water, and then more information on the fixed assets as well. Remember that in report 20, there is one report that will combine the operational inventory, which is non-fixed assets, and then the fixed asset at the same time. So we'll have a pretty good idea of what we have in terms of inventory in a holistic, let's say, way. Then we have these AWS reports, which are the one for equipment, the one for inventory, and the last one for write-off and disposal, which are very important reports. They are not devoted for KPIs purposes, but they are for you to be used in order to analyze what's how your equipment looks like, how your inventory looks like, and the write-off and disposal process, how they do look like. Based on the objects that you have on the left panel, you may want to drag and drop and see reality from another point of view, let's say. And from there, you may have findings, you may find some discrepancies, and based on that, you will do the investigation and a bit of research. Remember that the other reports, the one with numbers, are focused on the KPIs that you're supposed to report on in different business processes. So I don't know. That's a bit of, in a nutshell, the summary of what we've been doing this week. Remember that yesterday we sent out the first exercise, which is related to equipment. We are envisaging to have at least this exercise back to us with screenshots on the April 12th COB. Please just try to take a look at it and do your best. We are not going to penalize, if we don't see the number that we're looking for. What we're going to at least check is that you guys started to use the report, and it will be a good chance for you to actually pose questions either to us, either to business, or even the BI developers as well. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is to improve business processes related to reporting related to property management at the end of the day. So you may expect another exercise on write-off on one of the last business processes, but please you have to understand that now this week it's been a very hectic week in terms of the data as well, because the reports have been, let's say, transferred or transported from the pre-production environment to a production environment, and there are some difficulties and technicalities involved in all that process. So that's why you have some reports are not yet into production. So and that's why We want to wait just a little bit and probably give you Monday or Tuesday the second exercise that is actually related to write-off and disposal. I will want to make sure that the information is ready and available for you next week. So that will be for the second exercise. Both of them, the first one to COB, the due date will be April the 12th, and for the second one, we'll give you 3 extra days. But don't worry, the information will be duly official and will be sent out through an official email, so don't worry about that. Then, more things, Ryan, probably the test, we have to talk about that. Today, we'll send you a link with 10 questions. It's an online test. It will be covering several aspects of this week, like, for example, a reported entity versus business area. Remember that we started with that concept, very important. You know that there is a mandatory field, which is the business area, which is the financial responsibility of the equipment itself or the asset, and then a reporting entity will convey or may have several other business areas. It's a one-to-one relationship or one-to-n relationship, depending on the number of equipments that belong to other business entities rather than yours. So you may expect a couple of questions on that. Questions on, for example, if you do have to have a virtual goods receipt and you have information about the time that it's needed to include the date on the virtual goods received in the system, which report you will use, which report you would use if you want to analyze the appreciation of fixed assets in your stock, for example. So obviously this is open book. So this test is intended for you to be used as, let's say, knowledge transfer as well. I mean, it will be good if you can just take a look at the presentations and job aid and then do your test on your own, or you can use the material as well. But the intention here is for you to start using the report, using the job aids, and using this material. That's for the test. COB, I think due date will be April the 12th. Again, we will send all this in official email, so you have clarity on this, with the link on the assessment and another link on the survey, because we want to improve and we want to know what we did wrong, what we did right during this week, so we can improve and take lessons learned for the next one. Probably, I think we have to do something with the WebEx, Ryan, that's for sure. We took good note of that. Because we have to understand how we would, why that happened. And for the rest, I don't know, Ryan, if you want to, over to you, you want to just wrap up or?
Thanks, Daniel. I think you've covered all the topics. Just remember to all, just some good tips is to, I guess I'm being heard, right? Okay, just some good tips is to review the PowerPoint presentations we sent. Go over the scenarios. The exercises are going to be very helpful. Also review the pages indicating business needs, KPIs, and what each report measures, because the exam is basically focused on that. Remember that the exercises are required for submission in order to be certified. So if you take the exam, pass it, but don't send the exercises, you won't receive the certification. Besides that, I think we've shared some key concerns from some of our students. We did honestly expect more concerns from you guys, especially from the report point of view. I'm sure maybe things will pop up as you have a chance to start playing with them in production and going through the job aids, because sometimes seeing it through a screen like this is not probably the best way for you to understand if it's meeting your needs or not. So we expect to hear from you through email probably, or maybe even a phone call. We also should probably take this time now, maybe if people in New York, maybe Cass, Kirill, the SMEs want to give some closing words, maybe on what's going to be in production soon enough, how long it's going to take the job aids to be all available and published on iSeek. But besides that, I think we've covered everything from our end. Again, you guys will receive the recordings for this session and the PowerPoint. And besides that, that's it. So I'll leave the floor to maybe Cass or Kirill if you guys want to add something.
Yes, I unmuted you, Cass.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, I hope the training session was received well by our colleagues. I suggest that you just start fooling around with the reports, in particular the AWSs, of course. I think by the next couple of days, we'll definitely give the instruction on publishing the rest of the reports. All of the draft job aids have been reviewed or in the process of finalizing the review. I think perhaps in a week, from our end, the business process might be over, and then the rest is a technical process of moving the reports back or into production. So that's our expectation. Perhaps another week or so, and we'll have the full set with job aids and everything. Pass it over to Kiro in case he wants to say anything.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Brian. Just to add from purely performance monitoring and reporting point of view, in the coming weeks, I would say by the end of April, we will share a performance overview on all the KPIs that are in PI now, as at the end of March, along with brief definition of prompts and filters to enable you run the reports consistently and in a unified manner for the purposes of performance reporting. I already started doing that for the peacekeeping missions. You probably received it. Same will be done for the STM. And yeah, as Gus said, going forward, it's important to explore the report functionalities and find out how best to use them, so that, as I keep saying, these reports are giving or are about to give us the same level of self-service functionality as we had in Galileo environment. So let's make best use of them.
Thank you very much, Kirill, for those words. Thank you very much, Cass, for your words as well. Thank you very much for your support and being there when we need it. We do want to thank as well very much our colleagues in RDM in Valencia. We know that you too, New York and the VI developers have been working on this for quite a long time, and this is not an easy work. It's much easier to show the reports rather than construct and build them, so all the credit to you guys. We feel that maybe there is a need for a support session once all the production reports are there and working smoothly. We're open for that in case that you need us to give an extra refresher on that. And we want to thank finally our attendees, students. We know that you guys were very active because you basically resumed the second WebEx sessions in 10 minutes. So we almost didn't lose anyone in this hectic 10 minutes when we lost the connection and the WebEx. So we really want to thank you for your intervention and your participation as well. Expect from us the second exercise and the test and the survey. Please try to help us with the lessons learned. And that's all from my part before I give the floor to Brian. Thank you very much to you all.
All right, thanks, Daniel. So, yeah. Nope, still not. Better? Not coming through. Okay. Well. All right, better now. I think now I should be heard. Okay. So, of course, you're going to close it. So, thank you guys again. Won't make it any longer. Thanks for joining us throughout the sessions. And in case you have any other questions, it will be in production by the end of this week, beginning of next week. So keep taking a look at those reports in production. They should be ready for all you guys to test. Any other concerns? Do the exercises and you production, it's also good if you find someone, take a screenshot and send it back to us, and maybe we can raise the issue and concern to the SMEs.